Welcome to Treasure Valley Podcast. I'm Chuck. Today's episode is brought to you by LowerGentry Studios. Mark your calendars for December 17th, 6 p.m., the Linen Building, Boise downtown. There's going to be an event called End the Stigma. It's a fundraiser for the Idaho Parents Unlimited, and you'll be able to catch the first episode of Canyon County, LowerGentry's web series, at that event. So join us. Today I talked to Vander Boegh. Vander Boegh loves cinema. He's a great camera operator and a director as well. We talk about his short films and a lot of other topics, including undergarments. Enjoy. All the lights are red, which means this is on the record. Welcome, Lee.
I feel like I'm being interrogated. Well, thank you for having me. I feel like it's like a deposition.
I don't have any deposition like questions. Maybe I do. What's the best Christmas gift you've ever received?
Ever?
Yeah.
Oh boy. I don't know. Best is subjective. I mean, there's best because, I really needed something like a utilitarian purpose and someone got it. Then there's the, oh my gosh, this was the most amazing toy I've ever seen in my life. And I was 4 years old or 5 years old. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm going to go with that one. It was a black semi-truck toy.
Oh,
I remember seeing that.
Was it remote control?
No, just a little. I wasn't very old, So I mean, this is, and I'm an old person, so you start doing the math on that, which I know you said no math, but
we can do some math.
Okay, yeah. Well, let's say we're talking more than 4 or 5 years ago. How about that? Yeah, I was probably 4 or 5 at the time. I saw a toy truck at a toy store. Some off-brand, something. A little guy. You pulled the little thing up and put the guy in there, just like a semi.
Oh,
it wasn't a Tonka truck. It wasn't a brand name. I just
aren't
saw
your parents happy then?
That's all I wanted that year. That was my Red Ryder BB gun, and I remember talking to Santa Claus, several versions of Santa Claus. That's all I wanted. That's all I wanted, and I got that. So that was pretty awesome. I'm sure there's other ones too. That's just off the top of my head.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, you think about things deeply. And so on my phone, I have some questions from the abyss that you made me realize that I should ask you some of these questions.
About the movie The Abyss?
No. So my friend Wes Grover, he was actually in Brown Truck, and he played the dude that owned the house. And he's capable of deeply thinking about basically anything. And so he came up with some questions when he came on my podcast.
Okay.
And he then gave them to me so that I would have them. And I wasn't expecting to be asked a whole bunch of questions, but he was ready to.
So he turned it around and was asking you the questions.
Yeah, okay. Exactly.
Well, I'm not that clever, I promise.
Well, here's one for you. When shopping for socks, what do you look for?
When shopping for socks, mm-hmm. I'm trying to think the last time I ever bought a pair of socks was. Those are, again, speaking of Christmas, that's the thing that tends to show up is socks. I believe that I bought...
Did you know that, to kind of go off on a tangent a little bit, did you know that at the homeless shelters, the most difficult item to come along to get for homeless men are socks and underwear, because we men hold on to our socks and underwear until basically they disintegrate?
Let me tell you something. Anyone that says that I have a issue with commitment has not seen my underwear drawer. I have underwear that are older than most people. I mean, at a certain point, they just become like an elastic belt, but you do not get rid of them. Yeah, I mean, I've got underwear from probably college.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I'm the same. Yeah, I mean, obviously, all guys. I don't think if there's a guy out there that's switching around their underwear every couple of years, they're lying.
Or they're in the CIA trying to, it's like some sort of they're changing their identity, because that's just, you don't think about it.
No.
So same thing with socks. I think I threw a couple away because it wasn't just little holes, but at a certain point you're just wearing like a calf warmer because your whole ankle is just completely out of it.
Like the heel hole is completely okay. If there's a hole in the heel on your sock, you just keep wearing that thing.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like if a toe other than my big toe starts to protrude and I can feel it, like my second toe or my third toe, like if that sock is like wedging its way around there and it feels like I have a toe ring on, that's a feeling that I don't like.
Yeah, well,
usually I try to, like, if it's a hole in the ball of the foot or the heel of the foot, you just keep going.
That sock has been there for me, and times good and times bad. What kind of a person would I be to turn my back on it just because it's gotten older. I mean, what kind of a disposable society have we become? Really, until they become like an ankle bracelet that just slides onto your calf, there's still some utilitarian value.
Keep it. And this is my undershirt. So I was changing at work because I wear a costume. We have a mascot. And so I am deemed
like the school mascot.
The school mascot.
Okay.
Like,
I just didn't know if this was a thing that you do. Like, hey, the mascot for Wednesday is a unicorn.
Yeah, no, no, it's something. I like mascots, and so I keep some mascot costumes. I collect them. I like to go out in public every once in a while. No, so I had like this undershirt on. I was wearing an undershirt underneath my dress shirt, and so I was changing into this. But I'm like, I don't need to like go somewhere because like I keep my slacks on, and I just pop off, and like my undershirt had so many holes in it that it was like embarrassing. You know, I'm like, oops, maybe I should have just.
Don't be embarrassed. Be proud.
I guess
those are badges of honor. That just shows how dedicated you are to the relationship you have with your shirt.
Reduce, reuse, and recycle. Why buy new shirts? So is there something that you look for in socks when you purchase them?
Probably as long as they're roughly the right size. And honestly,
so you don't think deeply about socks?
I'm trying to think. I honestly, I think I bought a pair of socks, or not a pair, but a pack. Mm-hmm. This is me thinking of what a word is I do the Matthew McConaughey driving a Lincoln thing. I bought a pack of socks. I can't remember how long ago, about 6-7 months ago.
Couple decades.
Yeah. And it was just like those ankle socks. And they were I just buy the cheapest ones I could find. Just like little cheap white ones, Walmart brand, I think. I have bought warm socks, like.
Those are important.
Right. So, going to a football game or just being outside, it's going to be cold. I have gone in shopping for socks with the specific purpose of finding warm socks. So I don't know if that.
I think that counts.
If that fulfills the criteria,
I think that's a good answer.
Yeah.
Warmth factor.
Right.
For specific utility.
Yeah, exactly. It's a utilitarian service. And by the way, I still have those socks. I don't know if they have holes or not, but it won't matter because they're staying with me.
Should we talk about some film stuff?
Sure. I don't know. I'm getting kind of excited about socks, though.
I know. All this undergarment talk is getting me excited, too.
They should make lingerie magazines, but just socks. Not weird, sexy socks, but like just legit. I mean, wouldn't it be great if you got a Victoria's Secret magazine at your house and it was just, one of those models just wearing like some tube socks? There you go. Look at socks.
That might be a new fashion statement.
It could be. That'll be our thing. You go into the sock business. Have models walking on runways just walking around in socks.
That would be just as tricky as heels, possibly.
Yeah, that's true.
It's depending on how well the floor is waxed.
It's like
the runway.
It's like ice skating.
Yeah,
like a sock hop.
Oh, we can talk about film stuff though, right?
Oh yeah,
okay, cool.
Yeah.
What are some projects that people should that you're proud of that you've done? Just so everybody knows, you are a director. You write with Christy, and what else do you do? What other hats do you wear when you're putting together projects?
Well, it kind of depends. Christy's much more of a big world person. She sees
big picture.
Big picture. Very. Well, maybe big picture's the wrong. Big scale. How about that? So when she writes, she's writing for stuff that could be on like a theater, or that you would see, distribute big scale stuff. I mean and she's incredible at it. That's what she's thinking. So when she's thinking of stuff, she's thinking of how do I make the best, whatever it may be. How do I make this the best? How do I want this to be no limits, no what would, none of the logistics. And I'm on the opposite side because I tend to write for what I think I can make. Mm-hmm. Whereas she's a true dyed-in-the-wool writer. I'm going to write the best story. I'm going to write the best characters. I'm going to write the best. If the scene says that they should be in outer space, then that's the most important.
Yeah.
As a writer, that's not really your job to figure out how they're going to actually be in outer space. That's whoever ends up with it down the road. So she has this much bigger scale. And that's probably why your writing is always so much better than mine too. Whereas I always kind of think about, okay, well, I'm going to be making this, so I can't do outer space, but I can do like a living room closet. So instead of having the astronauts, flying around in outer space, what if they ended up and Mars looked like a coat rack?
Yeah.
There we go.
And then we don't have to ADR anything because the sound inside the closet's really good.
Oh, I don't ever use source sound anyway.
That's right.
Yeah, I always. People either love it or hate it, but I'm always just talking because I, run my kind of like you. I run my own gear, run my own cameras and stuff. So, almost every time I shoot something that's not job related, my job is at a TV place, but for myself, I'm always talking through the camera. I'm like directing people as we're going. So most of the time I get around that by not writing any dialogue.
Do you do your own sound?
Yeah. Most of the time. Well, it kind of depends on what you mean by sound.
Do you do your own sound design?
Sound design.
Or
sometimes
do you have like a library of sounds that you use then, or just so in case people aren't aware?
Yeah.
In case the dozens of you that are watching, when you film something, either you use live audio because the environment isn't too loud and you can hear the actors and the dBs that they project out of their mouths is higher than the basic
dBs, dropping some decibels on us.
So they need to be louder than the background sound by a certain amount, otherwise you can't use the audio. But to me, like, not being able to use live audio is just like asking for just like an enormous amount of pain later on, because people don't when you put together a production and there's no live sound on it, then you are basically inserting footsteps. I was talking to Christy about this before. Like, I've spent probably 20 to 30 hours of my life just like inserting footsteps into those silent scenes. So if a scene is shot and it's silent, that's a quick thing that I learned, is you don't realize how many noises are happening, and you have to put those in. Otherwise, it seems like it's almost like that valley that they talk about, where the Erie Valley. If something like looks too much like a human, but it isn't a human, like that robotic thing, like it looks kind of like a little bit off. Uncanny Valley. Are you familiar with that concept at all?
No.
So like with robots, it's like robots are like cute to a certain point, but when they get too human-like and they're not human, like people get like creeped out by it.
Really?
I feel that way about sound. It's like if you get it really close, but it's not quite right, you're just kind of like watching it like, what the heck is wrong with this?
Right,
like,
yeah.
Oh, you need to have like some dials clicking, or like the pan needs to be frying at a certain volume.
It's crazy how much sound we're constantly hearing. Even just sitting in a quiet room until you take it all away. There's so much that's there. Yeah, we when we make our little short movies, I do it all no audio. Now, some of those little contest things, and I certainly don't have time for that. So
yeah,
but when we're doing our little jump scare movies, it's all sans audio. I think there's a word for it. I've never known a fancy word. What is it like?
ADR and then Foley.
Well, no. I mean, when you're shooting something but without sound.
Oh, there's a term for that?
I think so. But I shoot with the sound though, because I kind of have the references to when things are. So if you were to ever see one of my, my first what do you call it, like a rough cut or something, where my audio's still in there, you get to hear me talking and
over the top of everything.
It's pretty nuts. But yeah, no, I mean, footsteps are huge. Even little things like just little like a sound floor, just to give it some thing. I mean, obviously you don't want, for example, an air conditioner or a refrigerator to be distracting, because when you go and you record something in your kitchen, the refrigerator is like, oh my gosh, this thing sounds like a freight train, right?
Yeah.
But then you go back and you take all the audio out, and even see in my case, I don't write a lot of dialogue on purpose, so I don't have to ADR stuff. In fact, most of the jump scares, I don't think in any of our jump scares.
The two films that I saw of yours at Sandwiches, those were both. There weren't any dialogue in that. It was that creepy one with the blanket. That was so cool.
Oh, thanks,
how'd you pull that off?
You mean
can you give away these secrets?
I was just masking, yeah.
Okay. So in this one, Christy plays somebody that's scared, and this demon comes out in like the sheet. right?
Yeah,
Am I
it was.
remember that correctly?
You're pretty close. It was. She was just making the bed. It was real quick. Yeah, about 2 minutes, give or take. She throws a sheet. I mean, it repeats itself several times, and there's kind of a punchline at the end. But the gag itself, I think that you're talking about, is when she throws the sheet over nothing, but as the sheet lands, it lands over the shape of a person who wasn't there before. Yeah, and that was. It was a pretty simple concept, but it was.
Did you just layer the video up twice? Or?
Right. Yeah.
Okay,
So
split it.
So and then I masked that as the sheet came down, and it was simple in concept, but it was hours of rotoscoping that sheet to make it, because you got motion blur on it, and it just happened to be a white sheet.
Yeah.
And there's motion blur along the edges, and I was shooting at 24 frames a second. And if I would have been smarter, I just would have gone the fastest, frame rate possible.
And then export it.
And then, just add a little motion blur on that. Because the other things I had to do, which was a good learning lesson for me, is no matter how careful I thought I was being about where shadows fell, there were still shadows. So, for example, when there's a shadow, what happened is I, in the simplest terms, camera's on a tripod, which is unusual for me. But in this case, it made sense because it'd be impossible otherwise. And I just shot, a minute or so of just the bed.
Yeah.
And then we had a friend of ours who had come over to help make this. Her name's Stephanie, awesome gal. And it just so happened that she's short enough to where when she sat on the bed, because I was originally going to do it, we were just going to do it ourselves. And I was going to sit there, but, we're on top of a bed, and Christy is much shorter than me. So then I'm on the bed, and we were trying to figure out how that was going to work.
Mechanically, it was an issue to throw a sheet
there
over
was
the
some
top
logistics.
of you.
So thankfully, she showed up, and thankfully for a lot of reasons too. She's awesome. So we had one shot with just no one there, not even Christy. I just used that as kind of like a plate shot, right? Mm-hmm. Then I had Christy go through all of her motions with this gal Stephanie sitting on the bed. Mm-hmm. So when the ghost wasn't supposed to be there, I would just cut that out, and then underneath it would be that plate shot of just nothing. But what I didn't expect, or I expected it, but I wasn't as careful as I thought I was being, because there would be Stephanie's shadow, for example.
Oh, the ghost shadow.
On the where Christy is. So then I had to go in and cut all that stuff out. And I was also, fortunately, I was smart enough at the time in the moment to have Christy go through the motions also without anyone on the bed, even though I knew it wouldn't actually land. But had I not have done that, I also didn't have enough stuff I had to build a bunch of shadows on the bed, I guess is what I'm saying. So the actual masking part of the sheet itself was a pain, but literally creating shadows out of, black solids and mapping them and keyframing them and animating them was, it was like 2 minutes long. And I swear I should have made that thing 50 minutes, because the amount of work that went into those 2 minutes was... Yeah, next time I'm just going to have two people talking like this, and it's with the refrigerator in the background to make the sound.
There it is.
I totally went off. Would that kind of answer your question a little bit in terms of how I did that?
How you execute? No, I get it.
Yeah,
is this online? Is that video online, or
it is?
Other ones?
I believe it is. Yeah,
okay,
it's
just so in case people want to reference it.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
all of our dozens and dozens of listeners and viewers. So Vimeo or YouTube or what? Do you have a channel?
I think it's on both. Yeah, if you look up Lee Vander Boegh, on Vimeo or YouTube, I think they're both. I think that's the channel name on both of them. And then the name of that short you're talking about is called Dead Bed.
Dead Bed. Okay.
And the thumbnail, I believe, is. I can't remember what the thumbnail looks like. It's called Dead Bed. There's more than one Dead Bed though. So Dead Bed, Lee Vander Boegh.
That should get people in the right direction. And then what about the one that you just showed at the sandwiches? Is that online, or is that?
It is actually. That one's online as well, and I believe that's on YouTube and Vimeo as well. So if you find Dead Bed, it'll be in the same channel, and that one's called Hinsdale.
And that one had a cool effect where you had like basically footsteps, monstrosity handprints on the walls. Mm-hmm. And it's spooky, but they just kind of come out of nowhere. And I can imagine how you executed that one, but it was still looked. It was very eerie.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It was very eerie. Is that kind of? Do you do a lot of that stuff? You and Christy? I mean, those are the two things that I've seen of yours.
We've that's pretty much, those are about the only two we've really done. I mean, we've talked about ideas for other ones, and heck, I've even once in a while I'll just grab a camera and come up, but it's never really been any. Those are about the only two like formally, hey, we made a movie, like a completed thing, like a specific built purpose to actually, show people.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the only two. Now we've got about 1 million ideas for other ones to do, but we just haven't really.
It's a lot of work.
Oh, it was a ton of work. That like I said, Deadbed, we came up with the idea on, I want to say like a Friday, for example, Friday evening. We reached out to a couple friends to see if they wanted to come over and help out. And it was John Wee, Liam Tane, and Stephanie Cullen. At the time, I didn't know Liam or Stephanie very well. Mm-hmm. I just reached out to John because he knows a lot, and I was like, "Well, hey, this would be an opportunity to learn from him." And he goes, "Hey, that's great. I've been hanging out with Stephanie and Liam, who I knew as acquaintances, but didn't really know them that well." So they all came over, and we shot that like in the course of an afternoon, couple hours maybe.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and then it was, like I said, it was
infinity post-production.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of that's probably, I would be much better if I probably had a schedule, from the very beginning to say, here's what we're going to do. We got this written. We're going to shoot it on day 1 or whatever, but by day January 3rd or whatever, it has to be, out the door. I never do that because there's no real pressure.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, I'll dilly with a little bit there, then I'll come back to it after a couple days. And then at that point, I'm like, what did I do last time? This is stupid. I better start over.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, I've been there with some of the smaller, we're pushing ourselves. So we just finished shooting a web series in August, I want to say. It was when we wrapped. It might have been end of July. And so we've been like just busting to get that stuff edited. It still ended up being a lot more.
And how long is it's an episodic. I know that much.
Episodic. So it's 9 episodes, anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes per episode. So I think it's like 90 some minutes the entire thing, and we get the first like 10 minutes like finished. So, I mean, I can show you that when we're finished.
Oh, I'd love to see it. Yeah,
if you want to see that first episode. It turned out pretty well. Obviously, it's like a learning curve with this film stuff because that sound thing. That was the first lesson I learned on our first feature film as far as like background noise, because we had recorded most of our sound live, even though the microphone was like really crappy on the camera that we used. It was just like whatever. I just tried to like fix it as much as I could on I was using Audacity at the time, which is like a free sound editing program.
I think anyone who's ever been a do-it-yourself movie maker that's like the that's like everyone's uncle. Like everyone knows Audacity.
Yeah.
Even Audacity, if they don't want to admit that they have it.
And Windows Movie Maker.
I never use that one.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, Audacity, I think that's standard.
Our first camera that we were using was an old DV camera, and we had to actually pull a computer out of storage because it had like this super old version of like FireWire connector, and it was the only way to get the DV off into the computer, because I'm like, I can't get a USB adapter for this. It only sent it over in like 240 lines of resolution instead of the 480, and then it looked really awful. Yeah. And so anyway, so the sound or the noise in the background. So we had a high quality. Somebody ran, our friend Jeremy ran sound for us, and he had a high quality microphone, that a boom mic and like a Zoom recorder, and we're like, oh sweet. In the meantime, we're shooting on a soccer mom camera.
Right,
it's like a Canon like $200 whatever, and so we have like this really high quality environmental sound for this, and we're like, oh sweet. And so I go in there and I'm like, wow, with the sound remover tool, I can just like get it out. Like there's no noise at all. And so I cut all the sound out of it, all the background sound out of it, and then had the dialogue just like super crystal clear. And then when we watched it, it was really weird.
It's too clinical, isn't it?
Yeah, it was like because there was very little echo on the or reverb on the voice anyway. It's just that dead sound in the background. It was like it made the movie feel slow.
Yeah.
And then to fix it, all I needed to do was just insert room noise.
Isn't that, yeah.
It's so bizarre.
It's so funny how, you know, technology pushes stuff to be so clinically good. I don't know if that's the word to use. Because you see that with cameras too. You know, hey, this camera's got 78 stops of dynamic range, and it does this perfect and that perfect, and it's 100% sharp or whatever these terms are. And then you watch it, and you're like, this doesn't even feel like a movie.
Yeah, some of those, I've seen some of those films too, where you watch it and it's like 4K and then like 60 frames a second, and it gets that soap opera effect,
Right?
And it feels weird because it's almost too real. And Amanda Carroll, do you know Amanda Carroll?
Well, I know as an acquaintance. I don't know her that well.
Yeah,
but,
so she was nice enough to give my bro and I a quick tutorial on we bought her a bunch of tacos and then brought them over to her place, and we're like, hey, we're trying to match all this footage. We're terrible at color grading. You know, it's just one of those things, one of those battles that we've been fighting, and so finally we lit we learned some lighting techniques from our friend Johnny V, and then we're like, okay, we can then do this in post. And so she sat down with us and gave us like all these pointers, and it's kind of like you want it to look not very real, and that's what people like. The better the quality, the weirder it is.
It's kind of like what you were just saying about the Robot Valley or whatever that was.
Uncanny Valley.
Yeah, you know, bringing that all back around.
And she was arguing that it's stupid that Netflix has a I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I think this was basically what she was saying, that 4K, like it needs to be on 4K and it needs to like follow these guidelines.
I'm going to call her and say that's a direct quote.
Oh, yeah. Just so you know, I disagree with you. No, don't call her. Just put a post on her wall on Facebook, because that's the best way to handle things.
That's how we communicate. This is like 2018, almost 2019.
Yeah.
People don't actually talk anymore. In fact, we're not even in the same room. This is a Facebook post just kind of split down the middle.
People wouldn't know. We just both like to decorate very similarly.
Yes,
in our spare rooms. But she was complaining about the fact that like 4K is the new standard, and she says that she would prefer to shoot in 1080p all the time because it's better on the actors. Because it doesn't look so bizarre, and you can't tell that they're wearing makeup. And then she said that's just what people prefer to see in the theater. Which I think there was a story about The Hobbit, guy that directed The Hobbit, Jackson. Yeah, he shot that in like 60 frames a second, and like, you know, like all, and then he said he had to get rid of all of it, and he just had to export it at 24 frames per second because it just looks weird. If you don't get that motion blur, it looks weird.
It's you know, we've like I was just saying about this whole clinicalness. You know, technology pushes to make things so spot on clean. You know, how do you graph a curve to, you know, adapt your curve so it exactly is whatever, with no noise and with that, you know, audio, video, you name it. But I think that a lot of the characteristics of something, almost the humanness, if you want to use that word to go back to the Robot Valley, is the imperfection.
Yeah.
You know, and I think of singers or musicians. You know, my background is in, you know, before I did any of this stuff, I was a hack musician for a while.
What do you play?
Whatever you need me to play.
Cool.
I won't play it well, but I'll play it.
So I'm the same.
Yeah, I can't sing though, so don't ask me to sing.
Right on the same page with you there. It's like I played guitar pretty well, but like everything else, I'm like, I want to play this, I want to play that, and it's like, I can just
pick it up. Yeah, figure it out.
Mediocre.
Yeah, jack of all trades, master of none, I suppose. But one of the things that I was noticing, and I think this is where I struggle with a lot of, I don't want to say modern musicians, because I think musicians are they've always been talented. Musicians are just a cool group of folks, bizarre in their own way. But with a lot of emphasis now on shows, and I don't watch them, so I'm just using a broad statement.
Okay.
But, you know, these game shows where, you know, come on and be a singer, and you win idols and those kind of things. There's so much emphasis on how good you are. And sometimes I watch those and I think about, the most iconic voices ever, at least in our last 100 years. Would they have even made it past the first round of some of these shows?
Oh man, the singing thing. So the singing thing to me is, I cannot stand it when somebody sings and they sound like they're in a musical. Like if you go see musical theater, you need to be able to...
You're going to get me started on a whole nother tangent here. Yeah.
Okay. If you go see musical theater, it makes sense that they sing clearly and you can understand the words coming out of their mouth, because it needs to be, pure tone, and it's not necessarily it's about the song, but it's not about the singer, and they get lots of different people to play the different parts to do the musical, and you have to be able to get it across. But any day of the week, I'd rather listen to like Radiohead. What's his name? Gosh darn it, from Radiohead.
Honestly, I don't know much about Radiohead.
Okay, so but
I know what you're saying though.
Yeah, very unique voice. You don't listen to people. You want to be able to tell what their voice is.
Right.
I mean, even if you look at Bob Dylan, like
great example.
Yeah, he can't necessarily hit the notes very well.
Yeah, and I really honestly don't know that much about Bob Dylan as a musician. I mean, I know obviously some of the popular songs, but I'm not a dyed in the wool Bob Dylan fan.
What do you listen to?
Gosh, I'll listen to pretty much anything. In fact, I was actually just remarking to my brother the other day about how much. Here's a random thing. I wouldn't be able to tell you the name of any group. I wouldn't be able to tell you the name of any singer, I suppose. But hip hop, I'm like a balding 40-year-old white dude who's like, this is freaking awesome music. There's just something unique about it that.
Did you just start listening to it?
No, I've always enjoyed it, know, but it's been just, I would say, in the last year or two where I've actually gotten. It's more than just what's on this station as I pass through them. It's actually like, let's see what's on there. Let's see what's new. And I think, again, part of the reason that I enjoy it is because there's so many new things that kind of come into that.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of, I grew up listening to rock music. I played rock music. I mean, that was my thing. And in a lot of ways, I feel it's kind of right now, it's kind of painted itself into a corner.
Yeah.
There's really nothing really that new coming out because my brother explained this the best way. So I'm giving him credit for this argument, even though I'll probably butcher it. Kind of like the way you did earlier. I'm not saying you butchered it, but it's like a sort of quote. But my brother, who's a professional musician, writes music for TV shows and movies and all these kind of things. We were talking about this, and he actually agreed with me. And because we're both, we had long hair in college. We were ripping through big, gigantic, stacks of guitar amps and you name it. And
I've been to several Fish concerts with 40,000 people in attendance.
See, I've never been into like the jam stuff.
Okay.
Anytime you're at a show and the guy's like, how much time we got? 30 minutes? All right, guys, this will be our last tune. It's like, is there going to be I've been here for 2.5 hours and it's still the same song. What's going on? But what he was mentioning was that in the rock and roll world, you hear this term sellout, right?
Yeah.
No one wants to sell out. Well, at the same time, whatever that means.
Yeah.
It's ambiguous.
I don't think you can do that any longer. I don't think there is such a thing as selling out.
And I don't really even know what that means. Everyone's got a different definition of that. But in the sense, it's kind of like painted itself into a corner because if you are a rock and roll musician, you're on this really tight rope of you can't just make your last album. You have to be different, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, what's the point? But if you're too different, then you get accused of selling out.
Yeah.
So as a result, it just kind of makes this kind of stagnant line. As much as, and I think that's why you see even like the big metalheads. The guy from why can't I think of the name of that band? Slipknot. Corey.
I know Slipknot. I don't know the name.
The singer. Yeah, he started his own kind of other band, and he's got a couple metal songs. But he's also got a bunch of like ballady kind of things. I was like, I get that, and I get why he had to do it that way versus
on the Slipknot
stuff. Because no one was listening to a guy singing a melody over a piano line. When everyone's got crazy masks on and they're beating kegs with iron pipes. It just doesn't quite match up. I'm getting way off topic, but the point is, what he was telling me is that the hip hop scene rather than discouraging people from selling out, so to speak, is the expectation is that every time a guy or a gal or a group or whatever comes out with a new album, the expectation is that it will be different. Like every album is a reinvention.
Oh,
So it's not a matter of like, oh, it's going to sound just like the last one. I mean, people aren't criticizing because they're different. They're hoping, like they're excited about what the next sound is going to be.
yeah.
I know that took us way off topic.
No,
I don't even
makes
remember
sense.
where we ended up.
I didn't realize that was part of the motivation in that genre, because like Kendrick Lamar is one of my favorites now. I don't know if you listen to any of his stuff, but
well, I might. Like I said, I don't know anyone's name. I'm getting to that old guy age where it's like, oh yeah, start singing me a song and I can like hum the melody because I don't know the words either. But so I don't know. Sorry, kids. I don't know who the stars are. Yeah.
Kendrick Lamar is one of them, and he's amazing. But his albums are very poetic. But the tones definitely change from one to the next, and each one is just as amazing as the other.
But I love that. Yeah.
I mean, obviously you recognize his voice, but the tone, the overall tone, and then the way that the sounds are mixed and things like that, you can definitely tell the difference between each album, which is cool. But I think that like I mean, the Beatles did that too.
Absolutely, yeah. Beach Boys. Brian Wilson was constantly.
we were doing Brian Wilson. You made me think of we were just putting, before you came over, music together for the Canyon County, and I was making a joke. I was trying to irritate my brother because I just had because
that's what brothers do.
Yeah. Because he's like, oh, we need to add a crescendo here, and I'm like, okay, let me think of something, and I just had it my keyboard hooked up to my computer onto like a bass drum, and just boom. There's a story about Brian Wilson. I guess he just sat at a piano before he composed like one of the songs for Pet Shop, and he just sat at the piano and just was hitting like middle C for like 20 minutes, and then all of a sudden ripped out this entire song.
That doesn't surprise me.
The guy was
the guy is on a whole nother level. Yeah. Yeah, and isn't, on a completely side note, isn't it fascinating? There's really, really creative people. And I like to think I'm sort of creative, maybe more so than the average bear. But I mean, Brian Wilson, that's like extreme standard deviations away from whatever is normal. And to think that I just get a good kick out of hearing about people's processes.
Yeah.
Someone creative like that, and I've never heard that story before, but that makes total sense because those guys that are on that level, like their brains are just so different than all of the rest of ours.
All we see is a dude like repetitively hitting the piano, but we don't understand what's going on inside of his brain.
And then all of a sudden out comes whatever.
An entire tune. What is your creative process? What do you do when you're thinking about stuff?
I wish I knew, because if I knew what it was, I would do it more often. I tend to have this. Well, when it comes to writing, anyway, if I open up a computer and say I'm going to write something, nothing comes out at all. I mean, maybe some crap here and there, but nothing that's ever really anything interesting, and I never really figure out how to use it or where to go with it. It seems like when I write, and I've written a ton of stuff. I mean, I haven't, shot a ton of these, but I've got a whole file, a whole folder of like little short things that are within, like that 2 to 10 minute range. And it seems like most of the ones that I'm actually the most proud of, like of those shorts, I'm not talking about like the feature length ones that Christy and I work on together, but of those short ones, the ones that I tend to be like, hey, that's actually not too bad, are the ones where for whatever reason, either because the internet was down and I was waiting for a site to load, I was like, oh, look, Microsoft Word or whatever. My brain just ran, and all of a sudden I ended up with something.
Yeah.
And it's not, perfect on the first pass, but it just kind of barfed out of me.
Yeah.
And I wasn't trying.
It's kind of one of those things, like those moments, it seems like you have to be very cognizant of it if you're not careful, because a lot of times I'll be hanging out, like my brother and I and Zoe will be hanging out, and we'll just be chatting, and then something pops up and it's like, oh crap, we need to remember to write this down,
right?
Or we didn't used to do that, and sometimes we'll just get really upset at ourselves because we'll all be hanging out, and then once the beers start opening up, and it's like, oh yeah, that's great. Like we got to remember to do that, and we don't write it down. And then it was like the next day, it's like, what was that thing that we were thinking of? Oh crap. And it just never comes back.
Right.
It's just gone. And I think like the big thing is like being able to be at the computer, at least now with smartphones, like you can just make sure that you have your smartphone handy. It's just like taking the time when that does strike to be like, okay, I need to put this down. I need to put it somewhere where I don't lose it, and then go from there.
Well, and I'm sure that's yeah. And again, my brain is so weird because even if I did something like that, I wouldn't really. I have a hard time sitting down with the preconceived notion of what I'm going to do.
Oh, really?
That's what, like, for example, let's say I wanted to write something about two guys making a podcast, and one of them drinks all their water and whatever.
Yeah.
I would be like, oh, no. But when I just have a blank page and I have no idea what I'm going to make, I have no idea what I'm going to write, I have no idea what's going to happen, like that's when it just kind of
it comes out of you.
Comes out, yeah.
Right on.
And while I'm doing it, like I said earlier, I try not to get too grandiose. Maybe I've got like such a small scale of a brain, it's never an issue, so I don't really write scenes about space stations, for example.
I just want to know what goes on in this room.
Yeah,
in this closet.
and that's usually it. It's usually one person going through something. It tends to be a lot of comedy because that's just I like comedy, and just that kind of comes out of me naturally. Whether it's funny or not, I don't know, but at least like the genre.
You
would be
appreciate
comedy.
it, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, I crack myself up. That's got to count for something. I'll give myself some Rotten Tomatoes. But yeah, if I have any idea of what I'm going to do, like it just kind of doesn't happen. But when I just start from nothing and have no notion of where I'm going, that tends to be where I actually have a complete story that, usually wraps up in 3 to 7 pages, give or take. But there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. I'm not even trying. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying like that's
sometimes you just have to like crank that stuff out. Otherwise you don't have anything when it comes down to it, like you don't have anything to fall back on if you need it, or sometimes it'll just come back to you a couple years later and you'll be like, oh, that's good.
Like when you see the trailer of it on a at the movie theater, you're like, oh, that was what I was working on. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Right when you've seen Brown Truck, and right when we finished filming it, the Ex Machina came out. Have you ever seen Ex Machina?
Really? No, I haven't, but I know the general. That I didn't realize the timing of it.
Yeah, it was really funny because just in case Brown Truck is ever released and people are paying to see it,
I'm crossing my fingers. I'm not flipping anyone off. I should make sure that or making any signs.
No gang signs.
Yeah.
You're unaffiliated.
Yeah.
Except for the Broncos.
Oh,
that's your gang.
Yeah, I better cover that up so you don't get a copyright infringement.
I don't think that's a problem on YouTube. I don't know though.
I don't know either.
But no, I lost my train of thought. Oh, is the Ex Machina, like it was really weird because they kind of have that same
mind in that movie kind of thing, right?
Where it's first of all, it's the singularity, basically like the invention of something more intelligent than ourselves, and then it also has those scenes which we stage, these garage scenes where this is where the encounters happen specifically in this location, and it's like in Ex Machina, it like follows that almost nearly that exact same paradigm where he like goes into that one.
Really?
That one. Have you seen it? Or?
No, I haven't. I know
really
the general
awesome.
gist of it. So now that you mention that, like because I know enough about it to know it's kind of one of those like mind bender, sort of science fiction-y, but it's not as reliant on the science fiction as it is about the mind benderiness of what's real versus what isn't.
Yeah.
So now that you mention that,
it's kind of like Brown Truck, but it's not as good.
Well,
which is like a huge production value.
Yeah. Boy, they really dropped the ball though. They were too much room tone.
It wasn't filmed in my house, so I didn't like it very much.
It would have been so much better. Yeah.
I only like the 2 movies that were filmed in my house.
Yeah. What do they know? I do remember I was writing something and I was sending it off to a friend of mine to have him kind of look at it, and it wasn't like done. It was just like these ideas I was starting to put together. Mm-hmm. And this would have been several years ago because I had heard this story about a pizza delivery guy who or no, I take it back. Somebody who robbed a bank, but the robber had bombs strapped onto him, and the idea is that he wasn't the robber. Someone had kidnapped him and put bombs on him and said he had to go rob the bank.
Ooh.
Or the bomb was going to go off, right?
That's a good idea.
So then he goes and robs the bank, and then there was some issue. The bomb went off anyway, and then there's like this back and forth. Was he in on it, and therefore the bomb going off was a mistake, or was he not in on it at all because he's not here to say. And that's
a good pyramid scheme too.
Yeah, it's like a Ponzi scheme, right?
Yeah. You go in, you rob the bank with the bomb on your chest, and then you pass the bombs off to somebody else.
Yeah.
You give us the money from this bank, then you go ahead, pass it, and then they give you the money.
Yeah, it's like Bernie Madoff was the guy at the top of that whole thing. So I remember that story. So I wrote a thing. It was a comedy. It was about a lowly guy who just got, down on his luck, who got screwed over, or not screwed over, but, kind of that scenario. But it was a comedy. It was about a guy who had to do all this stuff. He had a bomb strapped to him. And I remember I had written a lot of stuff for it. It wasn't as if I had like a full feature-length thing put together, but it was getting to be pretty close. I had all these ideas. I had these different scenes written out, send them off to a really great writer friend of mine, Lance Thompson, who's just fabulous as a writer. So I was sending him stuff, and he was kind of giving me some feedback and this, that, and everything else. And he sends me a link, and he says, "Hey, you might want to check this out." And it was a movie called 30 Minutes or Less.
Oh, okay.
And I can't remember who all was in it, but it was a comedy about, down on these luck kind of teenagers, early 20s guys who, same thing. The guy got kidnapped, bombed, and it was a comedy. I was like, took my pages and went, well, that was fun while it lasted.
Somebody else did exactly the same thing.
Yeah. Doggone it.
It does happen. That creative process where both people, you just get a miraculous situation where two people create the exact same thing or very similar ideas. There are 7 billion of us on the planet, so it's bound to happen.
What's the saying that there's nothing original anymore?
Yeah,
something like that.
There never was.
Yeah,
we're just all stealing each other's stuff, whether it's consciously or subconsciously.
Tarantino even, he'll even say that. He's like, "Hey, my." And I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember his exact quote, but it was something along the lines of that. He's like, yeah, everything I do is something that I've stole from someone I admire or something that I like. If I like it, I steal it. I assimilate it into the Borgness that is Quentin Tarantino.
As long as you take like little bits and pieces and then plug them in, I think that's all you are, is like your own amalgam of all these other influences. So.
It's like a mosaic.
Yeah, exactly.
You're just a mosaic of everything you like. That's actually pretty deep. That's as close to math as I'll probably get.
There we go.
Yeah.
We'll take that.
It's a matrix.
Because I don't want to
matrix of ideas.
Matrices. I don't remember how to do matrices in math either, so that's good.
If Keanu Reeves isn't there to save me from it, I'm completely lost. Yeah.
Maybe we should go back to the film stuff. We keep going off on these other tangents.
I've never been known to do that.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad I can get a unique perspective on you then. So what kind of equipment do you film on? And I'm kind of an equipment person. And I have a feeling that you like to nerd out on equipment as well. Maybe,
I do, but not in the way that most people do.
Well, explain that to me.
I actually, my nerdness isn't so much what is the best, my nerdness is kind of okay, I'm going to take what I have.
Yeah.
And then I will go be that weird science person who will kind of mix and match gray charts and real world little shots here and there to figure out, okay, here's what I have. How can I get the most out of it?
Oh, okay.
And I know we all kind of do that.
What's the situation where you've done that? An example.
Okay, well here's a example. Is I bought a used first generation Blackmagic camera.
Oh, okay.
I haven't shot anything with it yet.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've had it for a few months. And maybe it's because I haven't shot anything. That's why I'm doing this, because it's it's a different camera. And most of the stuff I've shot before is either on my old Canon T2i, like both those little short horror things you saw were on that little old Canon that's, 9 years old now and vastly inferior in terms of technology. And I'm not saying that if you would have shot it with something better, like you can't put it next to like an Airy and be like, oh, look, I made it look just like that. But I take a little bit of pride knowing that, some people will come up to me afterwards and say, oh, what'd you shoot that on? And when I say, oh, it's just an old Canon DSLR, they go, oh. As if, you know, once they knew that, it wasn't any good.
You seem to have a pretty good understanding, and this is something that I'm learning still, is that you have a pretty good understanding of lighting, I'm guessing. Yes.
I enjoy it,
Yeah, it's really cool, too.
A good understanding is kind of subjective. You know, I'm sure Roger Deakins would come in here and be like, you amateur, you know.
Well, I think that taking time to correctly light a scene is definitely underrated, because you can't, like you said earlier, you can't just take an expensive camera and like point it at something and make it look interesting. And,
right.
And our friend Johnny V helped us out on Canyon County, came into one of the houses that we were shooting in, and it was he like bounced like the light off of the wall, and it like changed the color of the room like ever so slightly, and then like put like a drape over the window, and you could see it. You know, like the difference in the room was like visibly different. It's like, now we can film this, and it doesn't necessarily. That step was such a drastic change from having the same, you know, the equivalent lighting setup that we had prior to that with a low-end camera versus a high-end camera. Like, I don't imagine that change was, the physical change was a bigger difference than the equipment change.
I think you hit it right on the money. Is I think there can be, you know, there's extremes, right? Some people are so into the gear, and that's when I think that's the trap that even all of us can fall into, which is the like you said, the gear. How do we make it clean? What's got the best signal to noise ratio? What's got the best this? What's got the best that? And then somewhere along the way, it kind of loses its humanness, right? Yeah. And I'm not saying it loses its humanness because the gear, although I think that can happen sometimes. I think what happens is we rely so much on the technical that we sometimes forget to be creative in the process, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've watched you guys' stuff, and to find out that you made it on a $200 Best Buy camcorder with autofocus and everything else is like mind blowing, right? And
nice.
You know, and it's incredible because you're using, and you've told me that you do it in black and white because the camera just doesn't look that good when it's in color, right? And to me, that's what I think is that's the nerdness of what I enjoy. Is it's not about like what's the best. It's about, here's the tool that I have.
And how do I work within our limitations?
How do I find out where the limits are? You know, both left and right of zero. You know, if I go this far left, how far can I take it? If I go this far right, how far can I take it? You know, so what you guys have done with, you know, a $200 camera is absolutely insane, because that's the exact same thing I'm talking. You know, it's a perfect example, which is, hey, here's what we have. Yeah. Would it be nice to have a $80,000 Arri, or go rent a Panavision and shoot on IMAX film with an anamorphic? Yeah, all that stuff would be great. But even they have their limitations, you know? I mean, everything does. So I think it's the limitations that give something its character. And it's just a matter of finding what those limitations are and discovering them, and then figuring out kind of your voice in that. Because I think really gear is such a subjective thing that it's not always about what's the best. It's about what's the best for you and what's the best for your style, you know, your voice if you're a singer. You know, I mean, Neumann or however you pronounce that makes incredible microphones. But, you know, ask anybody who's worked in a recording studio for any significant amount of time, and they will tell you that some of the best singers don't sound as good as they could on a $8,000 microphone, and they'll put them on a different brand, or they'll put them on sometimes even a cheaper one. I've even heard of big time studio musicians who have actually sang, whatever the word would be there, into a, I don't know if you're a microphone person, but a Shure 57.
Oh, okay.
I think it is.
Yeah, they're like, those are like $80 or like $100.
Yeah,
that's what the stereotypical like garage band uses as their first microphone.
And if I'm remembering the numbers right, it's been a while.
SM57?
Yeah, the 58 I think is the vocal mic, and the 57 is the instrument mic. Right?
Oh, yeah. So that has the flat, the 57 has the flat
yeah,
top.
you jam it up against the snare drum or up against the grill of a guitar amp. But whoever, I can't remember who the story was, but it was some A-list. I mean, this wasn't like, you know, making a demo. This was like a full polished, produced, top tier album, and the singer was actually singing into a Shure 57 because that's what created. That was for her, because I think it was a gal. Her particular voice, the way she sang, the anatomy of her vocal, whatever it was, that microphone actually
did the best job.
Enhanced her vocals better than $100 microphone. In that instance, was better than an $8,000 studio microphone. So I think bringing that back around is it's not about the best. It's about what complements your particular style.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I nerd out on gear. I enjoy kind of pushing things. How far can I do this? How far can I do that? And that's really why I haven't really shot anything with the Blackmagic camera yet, because I haven't really found those limits yet.
The new camera thing is always scary too, because we just got this one that shoots in 4K.
That's the one that's on me, right?
Yeah, the one on you. Yeah,
the good one then. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
I'm just kidding.
And it's just nerve wracking because like you get used to the equipment that you have, and you learn where the limits are, and then the fear always when you move to new equipment, just because the film stuff is so much work, is like, what if I screw it up?
Exactly.
And then you're not just wasting your time, you're wasting a whole bunch of other people's time.
Yeah.
So we'll probably do. The nice thing is at least that there are three of us. So like Zoe can act, I can run boom, my brother can run the camera, so we can test it out with just like Zoe, just figure out some stuff to do so that we're not wasting other people's time.
Right.
But like the idea of like, because we picked this up right before we started shooting Canyon County, but we took some lighting lessons and stuff like that prior to that, so that one looks a lot better than visually than the things that we've done prior. But we thought about like shooting it on this one because it has more information in the image, which is a huge deal as far as post-production is concerned, which I'm sure you're aware of. When you get more information on there,
just more you can do with it, right?
You can modify it, and then you can make the shots look a specific way if you want it. But then we're like, oh boy, like what if there's something that we don't understand, we don't know yet, and we spend an entire day shooting on this, and then, because the way we shoot our stuff is usually weekends, and they're really long days. It's like Saturday and Sunday. We don't have time on Saturday except to pull the footage off and maybe check a couple shots to make it look okay, because we're going right back in on Sunday. So it would possibly be wasting 2 days before we get into the editing process.
And a lot of these cameras, and I'm guessing this is probably the same kind of thing, is, they kind of have one of those log profiles where it's not what you see is what you get per se. You got all this, not to get too nerdy, all this stuff already, but like it's just a different way of capturing that information, that light information and all, everything else. So what you're seeing often isn't what you're getting. And I know there's workarounds around that, but like my little Canon T2i, just, is your standard little Rec 709 or sRGB or whatever color space, just comes with those kind of things. So you look on the back, and I learned little tricks in terms of where to kind of put the skin exposures, specifically for Christy, since she's in almost everything I've ever made, pretty much. Little tricks I've learned, because you really can't push it. I mean, it's a little 8-bit camera, right? So if you pull it a little bit, it breaks up. If you push it a little bit, it breaks up. So you have to be pretty spot on. And even with the lighting, I would try to make it everything as close to what I wanted in the camera, and then I would kind of like enhance. I mean, it was quite a bit of work. I mean, I'm kind of making it seem like I just kind of went over like I'm on pass, but I would go in there and kind of enhance what I had with different things. But it was like 98% of the way there.
Oh, okay.
In the camera.
Yeah.
And the same thing with my job camera. I have a job at a TV station, so I've got an E&G camera, 1080 interlaced, snap zoom lens, which is pretty awesome because I love old grindhouse stuff. And it's the same thing there too. I mean, it has that standard kind of profile that you see, and I know that if I set my zebras at a spot, and I on a person with our skin complexion, I just look for like the highlights, and if once they start getting, it's like bam, exposed, good to go. But the new camera, heck, I don't know. Every time I think I got something, I pulled into a computer, and it's like, oh my gosh, this looks terrible.
Different.
Yeah.
That's
so.
It's panicky when you get a new camera. It's exciting, but it's like scary at the same time.
Yeah, it's like going to summer camp. It's all exciting until you get there and realize you don't know anyone.
Yeah.
And what if you're the smelly kid? The one that you always talk about. Like, wait a minute, that might be me this year. I don't know anyone here.
I hope I didn't just waste $1,000 on this setup.
Yeah. But I'm excited to see what you guys do. I mean, you guys are incredible. One of the things I love about you guys, I love a lot of things about you guys.
Oh, nice.
But as it relates to making movies, is that you guys have a voice.
Thanks, man.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, because I don't know how to describe it in like an actual technical way, but when I'm watching something that you guys have made, I know it's something that you guys have made.
Oh, cool.
Like and I don't think that would change with the newer camera or the best camera or anything, because all those things can come and go, and you can get better at the cinematography-ness or the whatever color correcting that you were talking about or color grading, but the voice will always be there,
until we sell out.
Well, until you sell out. Yeah, selling out for more money.
I would love to do. No, write me that check.
Yeah,
no,
right.
Thanks, man. That's a really nice compliment.
Well, you deserve it. I've seen both of your features. Well, I still haven't watched all of the second one because like I said, we had to leave.
Yeah, that's too bad that.
But I will. You sent me the link, and
it's up there.
I'm actually glad that we're having this conversation because I've been meaning to get to it. Because I really, like I said, I really enjoyed. It was a brown truck, I think, was the first
sci-fi,
one. Yeah. And then I really enjoyed where you were going with this one, and I think there's something to be said for someone who has like a voice. Take Aerosmith, right?
Yeah. There we go. There's a good.
There's a voice, and would
Steven
he?
Tyler, yeah.
Would he ever win American Idol? I don't know, but every album sounds like Aerosmith from. The first album back in the early 70s all the way to whatever they put out recently. The sounds have changed. The way you record stuff has changed. Their actual style of making music has changed, but it still sounds like Aerosmith. It still sounds like Steven Tyler singing. Even though he's gotten older, it's still Steven Tyler. Still sounds like Joe Perry the way he plays guitar, and Brad Whitford, I believe, is the rhythm guitar player.
I don't know.
Yeah, sorry, Brad, if I've messed your name up. But there's the voice.
Hopefully he notices this and writes a negative comment.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Brad.
That'll be the day.
Yeah, because you've gone from 8-channel on tape to now you've got unlimited, essentially, channels on Pro Tools digital, and you've got all this, all the stuff that's increased, but it still sounds like air. So that's what I'm saying. Like, your stuff will still be your stuff, even if the latitude, so to speak, gaps get bigger and the technology you guys embrace more like expensive stuff or however that works, it'll still be your movies. Like, you'll still watch it and go, okay, this one's not in black and white, but it's still them. That's kind
of what we're hoping for, because ideally we want to be able to make some money on the creative end of things and not have to go down the like doing like the commercial production, because we teach and it pays the bills,
right?
And we get time off so we can do this stuff, and so the goal is to just kind of like, I don't know. There's got to be a way to do your own thing as long as you can keep cranking out the content. Which
there should be. You tell me if you figure it out. Let me know. Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying. We're trying real hard. You and Christy have a good system too with being able to submit. And I was telling Christy this, being able to submit scripts and get some input in there, and that obviously, like with that method, because it doesn't work. I don't think it works with the filmmaking necessarily. Like, some people go through that film festival circuit and then they get the distribution and whatnot, and it's just like, we don't know. We have no idea how that works. And I think sometimes like people want to have the idea first, maybe. I don't know. We're gonna write a script though and start shopping it at those film festivals, because we see you guys do it, which is like super awesome. And then Randy Reese has one too, and you guys like win money and get like awards, and it's like another realm. And it's like, it'd be kind of fun to sit down and write something that we can't do.
Yeah.
Just to see if we can keep that same tone, and not be limited by like, oh, can we get a set that looks like this?
Yeah.
Somebody
want to be in outer space for this one. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I know where you're coming from, and that's the part I struggle with. Like I said, however many hours ago we've been talking is that's kind of the limitation of me. Is I always kind of
work within your
work within
realm of possibility.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the awesome things about Christy. And there's lots of them, but that's just one of them, is that she can see things on a much, like, if we were to go totally hypothetical. I'm just making names up, but hey, Steven Spielberg, here's something you might be interested in. It's probably not going to be about a guy on a park bench in Nampa, Idaho, who's having some really kind of funny, gaggy things happen, and then he has to go, fix something in the next 4 minutes in his car that looks exactly like mine. It was written to be a 4-door with the black car, so it can blend into, he's going to be like, what the heck is this, right? Yeah. So she is much better at seeing her the amount of crayons in her box, let's put it that way.
Oh, there we go.
She has way more crayons in her headspace than I do in mine. I've got like black, white, and then like some version of gray, and then I've got like a couple like colors that I've like chewed on and ate because I thought they were food, and that's pretty much all I've got to work with. She's on a much higher level than I am when it comes to the scale of those kind of things.
Yeah, right on. That's kind of how I feel when I'm working with my bro, is because he does like. Zoe and I help out, but he sits down, and that writing process is so difficult. But like doing that, well, Zoe actually does a lot more than I do too. I like to go through and then edit and then like add a few things here and there, and then put my name on the script.
Hey, that's. I'm pretty convinced that's how a lot of people get their names and credits too. It's like, no, you see the word "the" on page 78? That was me.
I added that.
I got a screenwriting title now.
We're already at an hour.
My gosh, man! I am so sorry.
Oh no! Hey, this has been fun. But maybe we should end with one more question. From the abyss.
An actual real question instead of me rambling.
No, I like it. It's lower pressure for me. It's very fun when it feels natural. Sometimes it's good to have questions, but I like this. You were gifted a giant warehouse.
Okay.
What do you do with it?
A giant warehouse?
Yeah.
I'd probably turn it into a soundstage and make movies with it.
Ah, sweet.
Yeah.
That was actually...
Is that the right answer?
That was a pretty easy one, right?
Yeah.
I said I would sell it, but... And then when he asked me that question, I'm like, I think I'd just sell it and then take the money. And but yeah, a soundstage. I would just be too worried about the echo.
Well, yeah,
and actually getting actual sound.
I would love. I mean, obviously, everyone always says, "Oh, wow, how cool it'd be to make a real Hollywood movie or something." How awesome would it be to be making a multi-million-dollar budgeted movie and then actually be talking through the camera? Like, I always wonder. It's like, yeah, I should probably not do this because what's going to happen if. Hopefully at some point in my life, I get the opportunity to go make something on a higher budget level. And I also love running my own camera. Like, I don't think I could give that up. I enjoy moving it. Like I don't really, it's hard to describe. In a lot of ways, how actors kind of have their own instincts in a scene, and most directors anyway would want to encourage them. Like, if it's your instinct tell you to do this, then you should follow that. And me, with the camera, which I usually have on my, that's why I keep doing this here. But this parrot, is I kind of think, in a sense, like the camera is almost like a character, even though it's not it's like a character and a meta character, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes I don't know what I'm trying to do until I'm in the moment.
Yeah.
So it'd be really hard. Anyway, long story short, I would love to be running my own camera that in a movie that I'm directing with millions of dollars worth of production value. And how crazy would it be to be like, all right, okay, now I need you to go over here. I need you to walk over here. Oh, the scary thing just jumped out. Oh, okay. Whew, that was close. You should walk over to the left now. Oh, no, okay. Slower. I would probably get kicked out of my own warehouse. You know what? I'll probably have to rent a corner of that warehouse to a CrossFit gym just to pay the bills now, because now I'm not making any money making movies.
CrossFit.
Yeah.
CrossFit primary, and then movie making secondary. There we go.
Yeah, there we go. CrossFit from 9 to 10 in the morning and 4 to... Yeah, can you imagine that? Okay, grip department, we need to wrap this up. The afternoon session of CrossFit's going to be coming in soon.
Right on. My dream is to still work 2 jobs where I'm still pursuing my dream part-time.
Yeah. Or you could just, a lot of those big camera mechanical things have, they're so heavy and they have weights as counterbalance. Maybe you could kind of dual thread it and actually have the CrossFit guys do their workout by lifting like a jib
Ooh.
arm up and down and rigging things up to a ceiling and stuff.
Hey, your film workout.
Yeah, there you go.
Carry this around.
And then charge them to do it instead of having to pay for a crew. You're like, hey, you're getting this. Well, yeah.
Now we're coming up with good ideas.
Oh man, write this stuff down for sure.
Because this is really a good workout. Actually, when you think about a film set, if you're moving a lot of heavy stuff around, like this is not light.
Well, and
like
you never
good quality stuff is not light.
And I don't know how you guys' are, but when I'm making something, especially if it's something that goes on for all day, is I don't eat like at all. And it's not because I'm so rushed and my stomach's growling. It's like when I'm in the zone. Like
Oh yeah.
My whole I just don't have an appetite. Like I would much rather keep going. So if we're doing something, even if it's something I'm not like directing, but if I'm just helping, and everyone stops to have lunch, oftentimes that's when I'll go shoot some B-roll or I'll go shoot something. Like it's like I can't stop and go eat. It's really weird. So not only would I be losing weight by not eating, and I would be getting gigantically buff by doing CrossFit with the counterweights, but I would actually be charging myself money. And if you don't think about it, that's actually financially sound.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good answer. Right on. Well, thanks for coming on, Lee.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And sorry for all the rambling.
Oh, no, that's beautiful. That's what people tune into. That's what our dozens of fans love to hear.
Well,
just get to know people. I think that's the point of this. Treasure Valley people. Here we are.
Here we are. Yeah.
So thank you for coming on.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's been a blast.
Yeah. We'll chat again soon.
Sounds good, man.